Well, hi everyone. Good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you're joining us from. We're really looking forward to the next hour where we'll be talking about the Forma add-in for Rhino. This is the second time we run a Go Further with Forma webinar. And unlike our other webinar series called Get Going with Forma, which is more focusing on general onboarding, the aim of this series is to really showcase a specific workflow or a specific feature of Forma. So today we'll be focusing on the Forma add-in for Rhino, and we'll take you through, first of all, the philosophy of building an open software and what that means and why we're focusing on building these integrations. And then we're going to spend the majority of the time in Forma itself doing a demo of the add-in per now. My name is Katarina. I'm based in Oslo, as I mentioned, and I work in our customer success team. So I work with customers, helping them integrate Forma into their projects and workflows. And I've got two colleagues with me, Anouk and Dimitar. And I suggest that we start by doing a little round of introductions, since we're all going to be quite active today and helping answering questions in the chat and so on. So Dimitar, do you want to go first?
Sure. So hi everyone, my name is Dimitri Vankov. I work for a small consultancy company in Oslo called Rhino. We've been collaborating and helping Autodesk and Forma for a while now, and it's been really fun. It's wonderful. It's wonderful people and wonderful teams to work with. I've been helping on the connected clients side with the Revit and Rhino workflows. My experience is mostly with the development side of things and not so much on the architectural side of things, but you know, I've picked up a lot as we go. That's about it.
Perfect. And Anouk?
Yep, I think we all have our own backgrounds, which are not similar, but that's good. So my name is Anouk. I am based in the Netherlands, working for Autodesk, and then specifically for the Forma team as a sales development specialist. And that means that I introduce new or relatively new customers to Forma. And my background lies within IT change management, helping customers to achieve their goals. And well, with Forma, we also have a huge value for customers. So that's the match for me. And I'm joining this workshop to answer your questions and help wherever I can. I don't have a technical experience with Rhino or Revit, but let's see what I can do for you. So if you have questions while Katarina is in the demo, please raise them in the chat or in the Q&A. So we are Dimitar and I are here to help you.
Fantastic. Thank you both. So before we kick off with the presentation and demo, I just want to share a little bit of practical information. The webinar is being recorded, so you will receive a recording afterwards that you can re-watch at your own pace or share with a colleague. And the upload will also be present on our webinar landing page so that you can go back and watch it again. And this is also where you'll find the possibility to register for upcoming webinars and watch other previous webinars. Secondly, as both Anouk and Dimitar mentioned, there is a Q&A. We'll leave some time at the end for that, but also feel free to pop them in the chat or Q&A window throughout, and they will try to answer them. And then thirdly, please do join our Forma forum for more discussions, both with us, but also with other clients and users of both Forma and those who use the Rhino add-in. This is a great place to share tips and tricks, share workflows, get in touch with us, and also access further learning resources. All right, so this will be our agenda for today. We'll start by talking you through where we are with Forma today and what our strategy is around extensions and these desktop integrations with Revit and Rhino. And then the majority of the session will be doing an actual walkthrough of the Rhino interop per now. So as part of that, we'll start by creating a project in Forma and ordering relevant data, which we'll then send to Forma using the add-in. Then we're going to calibrate the locations of an existing Rhino model with our Forma context. And then we'll prepare the Rhino model with Forma functions and building types and so on. And then the final step is we'll send the geometry from Rhino back into Forma to then review area metrics and some different quality analyses. And then we will end with a Q&A. And I know this is a bit of a wall of text. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but since we are presenting software capabilities and also the Rhino add-in is in a beta stage, we may make forward-looking statements. We do need to add a safe harbor statement, and essentially what it says is just that what we say regarding planned or future development efforts are not intended as a kind of promise or guarantee, but it's a reflection of what we know now. So just keep that in mind as we go through today. All right. So the first Forma offering, as I'm sure many of you know, is a cloud-based software for planning and early stage building design. And by early stage, I mean massing studies, volume studies, early phase feasibility studies. And Forma provides both decision support and conceptual design capabilities as of now. Right now, it's best suited for the earliest stages of design, as I mentioned. However, our vision in the longer term is to really expand the capabilities of Forma into other verticals like transport and water, but also into later project phases. And this is part of Autodesk's longer term objective for Forma, which is to unify BIM workflows across teams and also to improve the data flow between project phases and stakeholders and different asset types. But this vision is going to take a long time to realize. But the reason that we're mentioning it in the webinar is because it's good context to have when we explain the way that we're building Forma today with openness in mind, because it's part of this platform thinking. So let's take a closer look at the capabilities of the first offering of Forma, which is what you have access to now. And a central part of our philosophy and our strategy at the moment when building Forma is that it should be an extendable and open software, precisely as I mentioned, because of this platform vision, which is part of the longer term aim here. And for this reason, Forma, as you can see in the overview, consists of both capabilities that we build ourselves and also of extensions that are built in collaboration with or by third parties, which is the red banner that you can see at the bottom. So if we dive into what this means, we can look at contextual data first as one of the ways in which Forma can currently create value. We want it to be quick and easy to get into a 3D environment from day one, and therefore, when you set up a project in Forma, you're able to fetch a lot of relevant contextual data through Forma. The availability and quality vary somewhat by country and by region, but for our core markets, we're able to fetch things like building data, terrain data, roads, and property boundaries as well. And the fact that we're also opening up for third-party providers means that there are many opportunities going forward to also connect with a wider range of data providers. The second theme here is design and automations. You can sketch directly in Forma and make use of our automations and generate site layouts. However, we know that there are a lot of excellent drawing tools out there, such as Rhino, and it's therefore important that we also make it possible for clients to draw in their tool of choice while still being able to utilize the analysis capabilities of Forma. And for that reason, we have started building integrations with Revit and also with Rhino, which is the focus for today, as well as Dynamo. And third parties have also already created some really cool extensions. For example, Shape Diver, they have a building generator that runs on Grasshopper scripts. and TestFit have made their parking generator available through Forma. So a big opportunity space there, and looking forward to focusing on Rhino for the session today. And then finally, the third kind of theme here, analyses or decision support. This is probably one of the, if not the main value prop of Forma, being able to get insights into the quality of your designs in terms of sunlight, daylight potential, wind, microclimate, noise, and so on very early on in the project stage so that you can make informed design choices. And with these open APIs, it also opens up for opportunities for more localized analyses going forward. So that was a bit of an overview of what Forma consists of today. Now, I personally haven't been involved in the development of the Forma add-in for Rhino, but Dimitar, I know you have. So perhaps you can speak to this slide and share, where we are with the add-in today and what value it's creating and what that journey has been like.
Yep. So last year, prior to Forma's release, our colleague Christoph reached out to a lot of people to discuss the possibilities with Dense Spacemaker and now Forma. And it quickly became really apparent that most architectural studios really prefer to start their designs, their initial outlooks on projects in Rhino. They have a lot of tools and workflows that they've developed around Rhino and Grasshopper. And even though Forma has the 3D sketch mode and it's constantly improving that, there's only so much you can do with that. And there's also the time that you need to get acquainted with it and start being effective with it. And as we all know, the most important part of when you're doing a new design is optioneering and reducing the time to finishing an option, getting some results, getting some feedback so that you can start improving it as fast as possible and present the end result to the client. Rhino is definitely great at that. It's everybody's favorite sketchpad. While you can deliver some amazing designs, getting some feedbacks on the designs can be challenging. You do have wonderful tools like Ladybug and similar that can give you some feedback, but definitely the barrier to entry for those can be quite high. It can be quite difficult to apply effectively. And one thing that Forma is really good at is lowering the barrier to entry to get some of these really detailed and difficult designs almost instantly. You get almost instant feedback on the current building or a change to your building, and the fact that you can do that multiple times in near real time, it can really help you get to that perfect design. So that's the primary benefit of both to the Rhino users as in getting their feedback and to the Forma users as in getting better designs or designs that reflect their actual intent directly in Forma. And our job is making that as easy as possible. Hopefully we've done a good job. You have a demo for us that you're gonna share. Is there anything in particular you'd like me to discuss, or should we leave that for later?
No, I think you covered it well. I guess, yeah, we'll dive into it when we get to the demo, but you'll see that the Rhino add-in, as of now, it's two-way. So you can send a context from Forma, which is relatively easy to order and set up, and then also bring models back into Forma from Rhino. So it's a two-way workflow, which we're still definitely developing. So your feedback as Rhino users is very much appreciated.
Yeah.
Get in touch with us in the forums, for example, and let us know what you're missing. And this is how we can improve the add-in further going forward.
Yeah.
I also wanted to quickly speak to the results of the hackathon that we organized in Oslo last week. It was a really fun event where we had, software engineers and architects from all over the world really come together to see what extensions we could develop together. And the winning team, whose members you can see in the top right-hand corner here, they developed just in 2 days a connection between Grasshopper and Forma, which made it possible to run the Forma wind comfort simulation directly in Rhino, which is what the GIF here is showing. And this solution is created, it's open sourced, which means that others can make use of this in their projects. And it really speaks to how much cool stuff that we can build if we put our minds together. And there are a lot of synergies between the two tools. So if you haven't checked that out already, definitely do so. So I think that brings us to maybe the main part of the session today, which is a demo of the workflow. We're going to be working on a site in San Francisco near the waterfront. It's the site of the Autodesk headquarters, which is on this side here. And just a disclaimer, we're not involved in any development in this area. This is purely for demo purposes. And those of you who take part in the onboarding webinars will probably recognize the site as one that we've used before. So let me quickly rearrange my screen sharing here. Since I'm working on a Mac, I need to run Rhino via Parallels. So bear with me whilst I just switch that around. We're going to switch to desktop 1. And now I hope that you see my Forma page. Do you, Dimitar?
Yep. Yep.
Yeah. Perfect. So we are now in Forma. We're in our demo project page. So all the projects that you see here are purely for demo purposes. I've got my most recent projects at the top, and we're going to start by setting up the Market Street site from scratch and then bringing data in. So to do that, I click on New Project, and then I type in the location. One Market Street, San Francisco. That's the one. And I can choose the size of my map here, but in order for the data to load relatively quickly, I'll choose a relatively small area. It's just to fetch the most important context. I'll tag this as a demo. You can see some stats on the map area, and then I'm going to go ahead and confirm the map area. Now, what's happening in the background here is that we are fetching terrain data and setting up the 3D model. So in a second, we're going to enter the main scene. Here we go. And the first thing that pops up is an option to order data. Now, this project is in San Francisco in the US. The data availability there is quite good. So as you can see, we can fetch buildings from OpenCityModel or FEMA or OpenStreetMap. You can read more about the specific data source by clicking on it, but we're going to go ahead with the OpenCityModel. The terrain is from USGS, which is already fetched. Then we have road data from OpenStreetMap and also the possibility to bring in property boundaries from Regrid, which we're going to do. I'm going to go ahead and let me just move you guys around. Order the data. Order successful. I'm going to go back, do the same for my property boundaries. I can adjust this window if I want to, but I'm happy with bringing them all in. Order that data, order successful, and then finally the OpenStreetMap road data as well. Great, 3 successful orders. You can also bring in your own data if you have this at hand via the import button. So here you can see the supported file formats being OBJ and IFC, DXF, and also image files. But let's head into Forma. So you might wonder where this data has disappeared. It's now in the library, which is located in the left-hand menu. So if I click on that, you'll see the data sources that we just ordered appearing in the background. They're just loading. So I'm going to start by previewing the property boundaries. And I can select the most relevant ones, which will be these 3 right here. And then I'll add those to my project. I'll do the same for the road data and also for the building data. So here you can see the buildings. I'm going to remove the ones that I know are on my site because those will bring in from Rhino because we've remodeled something. All right, and there very quickly you have a 3D setup of your site. I'm going to move back to the navigator and just take you through what else we're looking at here. We have our proposal list with our different design options. Right now, we haven't drawn any yet, so we just have proposal 1. Then at the bottom, we have our layers menu. So all map elements get placed in layers. And by default here, they get placed in our base. So these are layers that apply to all our proposals. If I want to edit the base, I can click the little pencil button. And I'm going to select my 3 property boundaries that I applied to the project. And I'm going to, on the right-hand side, define those as my site limit and do a union so that we have kind of 2 connected limits there. Fab. All right. Now, when we bring context into Rhino, we can bring the roads, the buildings, the terrain file, the site limits, and we can also bring vegetation in. So I'm going to show you very quickly how you can draw vegetation as well. I'm going to go into a 2D mode at the bottom, and then I'm going to turn the satellite image on as a reference in the background. Might take a second to load. There we are. And then I've got my design tools on the right-hand side. I'm going to roughly define an area with trees just so you know what that looks like. By no means perfect for this, but say 30 and 20s. We decide the spacing and the height of the vegetation. And there we go. Now we have a little bit of vegetation added as well. The final thing that we could add if we wanted to is constraints. So they're found via the limits button that you have on the right-hand side, where you can draw site limits, zones, which might be useful if you have a larger site, or constraints. These are, as it says here, volumes to visualize the constraints of a project. So really the height constraints. And these would also be brought into Rhino. Great. The final thing I'm going to do before pushing this context to Rhino is show you how you can define different building functions, which will also appear in Rhino. So I will just very quickly draw a rough building like this. Select it, and then on the right-hand side, you have functions. The default functions in Forma are residential, commercial, and unspecified, but we can also define our own functions if we want to. And annoyingly, it's this fuchsia pink that turns into, that's the first option, but I'm going to make it blue. And we're going to add offices as a 4th function, where you can then tag the building, and this will be reflected in your area metrics on the right-hand side. Great. So now I'm ready to send this project to Rhino. Now, where do you find the Rhino plugin? First of all, this is important to know before we get started. Below the library menu where we order data, you have an extensions tab. Here you can browse all the extensions and also the desktop integrations that we have in Forma right now. So if we scroll down, you'll see Revit add-in and Rhino add-in as well. And this is where you can download the add-in the first time and also access our Rhino documentation as well. I've already done that prior to the session today, but for those of you who are new or want to access the plugin, that's where you would go. So next, I'm going to head into Rhino. And Dimitar, can you just confirm that you can see the Rhino project here?
Yes,
Yes.
we can see it.
Great. So here I have, and I'm not a Rhino specialist, so don't judge my architecture here, but I've drawn up some very simple volumes that we want to bring into Forma. To open the Forma add-in in Rhino, we can type in Forma in the command bar, and this brings this little plugin window up. And I'm just going to connect that to my layers on the side here. And what this dialog box shows is, first of all, it asks you to enter the project URL that you want to connect your Rhino project with. So here we need to fetch the link from Forma, head into Rhino, and then we simply paste that in there. Now it's asking me to connect, so I'm going to have to log in.
The first time you use the plugin, it will ask you to connect. Yep.
Exactly. Oh, it didn't ask me for my password, which I'm happy about because I was.
Yeah. So you logged in the browser already, so it does have that authentication. You just need to confirm that
it's
you
still
want
me.
to connect to Rhino. Yeah.
Exactly. So please close this page. We are ready to go. And if we now look in the Forma box, we can see that the proposal 1, which is the only option that I had, has been loaded into the pull-down menu here. We have the option to fetch data from Forma. And we also, at the bottom, we can define the properties of the Rhino geometry in Forma terms. So we can say, you know, which layers we want to push back to Forma and what those elements should be defined as in Forma and which function type they should have. If I now jump back into Forma and create a proposal 2, go back to Rhino and do a refresh, then proposal 2 will also appear here. So we're going to stick with proposal 1, and I'm going to fetch the context from Forma. This can take a second. It's telling me that the buildings are provided by a third party. Okay. And then
So some of the content in Forma has a display attribution. So our content providers would like request us to show that where this content originated from. And later on, if you use the bake command, it might want the content might have a requirement to have a export notification as well. So you might see another dialog there.
exactly. And so there are some countries where there are certain export restrictions on data from Forma to Rhino. So depending on where you are in the world, that might apply, and you'll then get a little warning saying, for example, you can display building data, but you can't bake them into the project, for example. But luckily, this doesn't apply to the US where this demo project is. We can bring all the data in. Great. So now we have brought in our building data, our terrain data, our vegetation, and our roads. You can see the model that I drew in Rhino doesn't really align with the site limit. So the first thing that we need to do, and this probably applies to the majority of projects, your model will be located far away from the Forma file, which is globally georeferenced, is we need to calibrate their locations. And the way that you do that is either you move the context from Forma to your model, or you move your model to the site limit. Most people would probably prefer not to move their Rhino model around, so we can move the Forma context rather. So the first thing I'm going to do then is just lock my default layers, which is where my model is located. And then I'm going to select the site limit. I'm going to click move. Zoom in a little bit. And I'll just move that into place to align with my building here. So now as you can see the whole context shifted. Did you, want to add something?
Yeah, if I may add, so the site limits are all grouped into a single block, and the background preview moves together relevant to the site block. So you're free to move the site block wherever you want, so that it fits nicely around your building. You can even rotate it. So you're free to adjust it as needed.
Exactly. And the reason that we did this before baking any of the context into the Rhino model is that then everything will shift with the site limit. So here you can see the different Forma elements that we brought in. We brought in the terrain, the buildings, the vegetation, and also the roads. Right now, they're just references. They're not really in the project, but we could, if we wanted to, we could bake the buildings into the project. And we could do the same with the terrain as well. And now these are mesh files that are added to their own layers in Rhino. Great. So now we've done that, I'm going to now go ahead and actually lock the site limit and so on in place and unlock my default building layers, because the next thing I want to do is I want to tag the Forma, the Rhino geometries with Forma building elements and functions. And the reason for doing that, you don't have to do it, but when we then bring the model back into Forma, we're able to read the appropriate area metrics, because we'll know whether this is an office space or a commercial space or a residential space, and also whether it's a building, whether it's generic volume, whether it's a constraint, or whether it's vegetation. So I'm going to select this building first. It's in my default layer at the moment. I think I'm going to use the layers up here, layer 1, layer 2, and layer 3. And I'm just going to go ahead and give them names on the side. Commercial and offices to make it easy. So I'll tag this as an office space. I'm going to go ahead and tag this as a residential building. And finally, the one on the side here can be a commercial space. If we scroll down in our menu here, you can now see we have residential, offices, and commercial as well on the top. So those are the layers that we want to push back into Forma again. And for each layer, you can choose whether these are buildings, constraints, generic volumes, or vegetation. That's basically how they're going to be read in Forma. All of these are buildings, so I've chosen buildings for all of them, and we can also specify the function they should have in Forma. So I made it a little bit easy for myself by just tagging it, tagging the layers residential. This one is offices. I change, there we go. And commercial buildings, perfect. Got 3 layers selected, commercial, offices, and residential. And then I can send these back into Forma again. Fingers crossed it works when it's a live demo. Okay, let's head back to our project. Back to proposal 1, which is where we pushed the geometry. And there we have it. Sometimes you need to refresh the page for these to appear. This time it worked without, which is good. But if you don't see them immediately, try to refresh the page. And here you can see we're back in our Rhino model, and we now have our office building, our residential building, and our commercial building in proposal 1 in Forma, which is where we sent it. The volumes or areas are also accounted for in our area metric breakdown on the side. So we have our gross floor area, our rentable area, our floor area ratio, and divided then into the different function types. Note that you can also create your own area metrics based on these default ones if you want to do that, and you can also adjust the factors and ratios that we use to calculate them. Now, next I want to show how you can now begin to really gain insights into the qualities of the proposals that you've drawn in Rhino. So in the top right-hand corner, we have our different analyses. In addition to the area metrics, we can look at sun hours, daylight potential, wind, microclimate, operational energy, noise, solar energy, and then we have this extensions tab here. So I'm going to start by looking at wind, because that's interesting near the waterfront here. And we have two different types of wind analyses in Forma. We have the rapid version, which is the one that you can see on screen here. It only takes a few minutes to load. This is kind of machine learning based. So it's been trained on data sets of the wind analysis to predict what the wind conditions will be like. It's good for getting an indication of what the conditions are like, but if you want to run a more detailed version, more suitable for documentation, we would advise that you run the detailed version. But this is useful for now. We can't wait for half an hour whilst this runs. And what we're looking at now is pedestrian comfort. So what are the conditions like on the ground for a pedestrian in terms of comfort? And you see the scale bar at the bottom here indicates that light green areas are suitable for seated activities, whilst if we move into the yellows, this is an area suitable for strolling, but not for sitting. So this is useful if you want to start programming the outdoor spaces. We see we have some nice and shielded areas, south facing, shielded by the buildings, but we do have some challenges in the middle here. So I might want to address that when I continue designing so that I have a more shielded outdoor space. You'll also see if you use the drawing tools in Forma, I think maybe see if this makes a difference. It's only 4 floors high, but you can see it immediately adjusts the results based on new information that it gets. So you could continue also adding things to your Rhino model and then pushing iterations into Forma to see what effect it has on the analyses, and it will trigger the update. We can also have a look at sun hours. if we run an analysis, oh, it's telling me I have duplicate geometries. Looks like I added an extra floor here in my Rhino model. Did that help? Maybe one more somewhere. That wasn't easy to see. Oh, it's underground. There we go. Okay, so that can happen and it will give you a warning. But now we look like we're good to go. So I'm going to choose my site limit and then I'll run this analysis on June 21st. So this logic you have to apply to basically all the analyses. Select your area first and then trigger the analysis. Takes a couple of minutes to finish. And there it is. Go into sun analysis to take a look at what the sun conditions are like on June 21st. We could have picked another date. Maybe June is a bit optimistic, at least in Norway. And then we can use the inspection tool to look at how many hours of sunlight reaches the facade or ground on particular points. So this area right here that was quite exposed to wind has really, really good sun conditions. So these are the types of trade-offs that you can start to see and which we can also take a look at in the microclimate analysis, which kind of combines insights from sunlight and also wind to say something about the perceived temperature on site. Now, the microclimate analysis can take a few minutes to run as well. And since we don't have the wind results, it probably won't give very interesting results yet. I did trigger one though earlier on a different proposal, which I thought if it's ready, we can take a look at. Let me jump into that and see. Yes, it actually looks like it's ready. So now we're looking at the microclimate analysis. We can go to June since that was the time of our sun analysis. And this takes into account historical weather data for the area and also the sun and wind analysis to say something about the local microclimate and how your design affects it. So here we can look at different wind directions. The most prominent one here is from southwest, indicated by the size of the segment. We can look at different speeds of wind, and then we can inspect particular points. Maybe not that easy to see since I kind of placed them on top of each other, but this is quite interesting. Just a few meters apart, you can have huge differences in the perceived temperature from 70 to 80 degrees Fahrenheit, from 67 to 80 degrees Fahrenheit. And this is because our design is creating these very local conditions. So very quickly we can begin to gain this type of insight. And finally, we can also take a look at the noise situation. As with wind, we have a rapid and a detailed version. The rapid version is also based on previous, it's trained on previous simulations. The area we can look at is a little bit limited. We haven't made it possible to expand the size yet, but that's hopefully coming. But we can see from the road here, we have quite a lot of noise entering our site. So might want to close up this area here to have a better noise situation. And as with wind, we could then should maybe have done this in That's an extremely tall building, even for San Francisco. Okay, that failed a little bit. Try again. There we go. Just to illustrate how the simulation will then update. Cool. Great. We have 15 minutes left, so I want to make sure that we have enough time to address any questions that come up. The final thing that I want to show you before we dive into questions is our compare mode. This is located in the left-hand sidebar. And this is useful if you have drawn many different design options, either in Rhino or directly in Forma or a little bit of both. And you can set up comparisons between different proposals or the same proposal, but different analyses. So for example, if we look at proposal 1, we can set up sun hours, noise, microclimate, and wind side by side. And begin to see trade-offs between different qualities. So this area right here, excellent in terms of sun, some challenges in terms of noise, and a perceived temperature of 80 degrees Fahrenheit in, let's see which month this is. Oh, wasn't that easy to open the window here. I think this was in June. And then you can take screenshots, include this in your reports, or just use it as an iteration help to improve the designs going forward. Great. So with that, I think let's open up for questions. Were there any questions in the chat that we should address, Dimitar? Or maybe you have already answered them?
We got some really nice questions. So
Yeah.
one of the issue was what kind of geometry should I convert my Rhino elements to before sending it to Forma? And I would suggest you don't actually convert it yourself, but instead you keep it as the original geometry that you modeled it in Rhino. So either a solid or a subdivision or fully surface. That's okay. The plugin will do the conversion for you, and it does convert it to a mesh under the hood with some simplification rules. We got one bug report already, so we will need to look into that some more. I'm sorry I can't answer that right away. Another one was a question by Anna about how come I can't see some buildings in Rhino. So one example of this that was recently introduced is the row buildings. Those are handled by Forma a little bit differently. So if you go to the building button, I think you're gonna see them at the bottom there. Houses or row buildings. And those do need some special care, and we don't support them yet. So you might see if you're using those, you might see a message about some of the buildings not going in. Anna, you mentioned something about tagging in Rhino, but I'm not quite sure I understood that part.
Yeah, it might be referring to, if I go back into Rhino, I think I was referring to this part where you specify which layers you want to push back into
right.
Rhino.
Okay.
Basically tag them as the element type you want them to be.
So by default, they're going to be marked as generics. You have to choose building if you want to see the functions, the form of functions. Otherwise, that little bubble is going to be hidden. Because it just makes sense to tag the buildings with those. If that's the tag you're referring to. Another question was asking about Grasshopper. It's funny you should mention Grasshopper. We did originally start with Grasshopper when we first did this connection last year, but a lot of the feedback that we got is that people would prefer to use this directly in Rhino, and since Grasshopper can already bake everything that you can generate with Grasshopper, you can already bake to Rhino objects. It's kind of a it's kind of an easier way to handle wider number of cases with by directly targeting Rhino. We don't have plans to bring back Grasshopper support at this time. We do have our friends at sorry, what was the extension that you can directly upload your Grasshopper graphs to and run it?
The shape diver extension.
Shape diver extension, yes, thank you very much. So yeah, if you have a really advanced Grasshopper graph that would model something, you could try the shape diver extension.
Yes.
Okay, we've got a few more questions here.
When I open my Save Rhino file, the Forma plugin button doesn't work. So every time I have to create a new file and copy my design there.
Forma plugin button does not work. Which plugin button is that?
Could it, or to the person who wrote this, do you mean this button as in when you click the Forma plugin, Rhino freezes? This happened to me a few weeks ago, and when I updated to the latest version, the problem went away. So if you haven't updated the plugin, that could be a bug that's there from before. So would advise you to use the latest version.
All right, a really good question by Trifon. Do you have to slice your building mass in Rhino to get the area metrics in Forma? Yes, you have to do that. So Rhino doesn't really have a concept of levels per se, so you have to kind of hint at what you want to define as your level representation or your slab. But what we do with the area metrics is every piece of geometry that is classified as a building, we slice with a plane. We get that bottom resulting face, and then that's the area that we report in Forma. But that is really an extra step you have to take in Rhino to perform the slicing, but it also gives you a lot of flexibility on how you want to slice the geometry and how you want to report on it.
Excellent. So I see a couple of people are mentioning that they've had various bugs and so on. So I think it's good to also mention that you can, or we really encourage you to report these to us. If you're not aware of our help button, I want to just highlight that. It's at the bottom, located in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen in Forma. First of all, it's where you can access the Help Center and read about the Rhino interoperability, which is a good first step. But it's also where you can contact support and also chat to us if you have a question. And this will be then relayed to the relevant team in Forma who can help you with your technical query if there's an issue. And the forum is also a third option where you can mention your feedback, and our developers are answering there as well as other Forma and Rhino users. So definitely reach out if you're experiencing issues, and we'll try to address them. Someone is also asking if the plugin works with more complex Rhino geometry, like hyperbolic or curved shapes. And I think the answer to that is yes. I think I demoed using very simple geometries here, but you can upload curved shapes, etc. as well.
Yeah, you can definitely have something more curved, or you could use sub Ds. It will have to be tessellated into a mesh, because that is the predominant way that Forma accepts the geometry. And it might have a slightly reduced number of faces, or some minor approximations, but the overall shape should be pretty near to what you had to begin with. The surfaces don't necessarily have to be closed, but some of the analysis will work only with a closed surface.
Great. Thank you so much for your time and engagement, everyone, and for all the good questions. This was really fun. We're going to send you the recording. You'll also find it on our webinar landing page, and we'll include the webinar landing page as well in the follow-up email that you get. And if you're interested in other topics like general onboarding or some deep dives that we've done into previous topics, that's where you can find all of that. So definitely head into the webinar landing page and see what's there. It's located in the help center as well. All right, then I think that's all we had for today. Take care, everyone.
Have a
Bye,
good
guys.
day or evening.
Bye.